Exactly. So he's written, I think, 5 or 6 best-selling business books, nonfiction business books, business life hack type books. And if he was going to do just another one of those, it would have been like, okay, cool. Like, just going back to the, what butter is your bread, right? That makes sense. But instead, he's like, I'm going to build like a world like Game of Thrones. He's like, I'm going to build a whole thing like this. Like, it's an entire fantasy world. All the characters are roosters.
Okay.
There's 8 houses. They compete in the great games, and they do this like, then there's a war, and there's different classes, and there's all the things like if you create like a sort of a giant fantasy like Tolkien or George R. R. Martin style thing, and along with it, there's like basically an NFT which you can buy that basically is not like it's literally just like you're buying a piece of art. And you're buying a ticket into the entertainment of like watching him build this world out. What's up? In this episode, we're talking about hanging out with Tim Ferriss, a guy that we've looked up to for a long time, and some of the insights that he shared with us. We talk about meeting a real estate billionaire and his model, how he built from scratch in 7 years to about $1 billion in real estate assets. We talked about the opportunity to build SaaS tools for OnlyFans. You're going to want to hear that. And then last but not least, Sam's got a friend who's created his own, religion. It's sort of like the Amish people who love money.
Kinda. It is almost like Amish people who love money. I'm going to this thing. I'm going to give a big update on it next week. But in this episode, when we start off, I'll tell you a little bit about it. I think you're going to dig it. But yes, that's the episode. Listen up. All right, we live.
Can I tell you about an interesting call I had with your old pal, Tim Ferriss?
I'm so eager to hear this. I only asked you a few questions because I was waiting to hear about this.
So I interviewed Tim Ferriss because he's got like a new NFT project that came out today, or it's coming out today. And
wonderfully
so I was like,
named.
hey, you should, called Cock Punch, right? So I was like, okay, what's that about? And I was like, yo, you should come on the Milk Road and like tell your story and blah, blah, blah. And I've met Tim Ferriss one time in my life. You've met him a lot more than that, I think, because he was an investor in the hustle and was kind of like lived around the same area as you or whatever. But I've met him one time. And I guess I want to tell you 3 things. One, it's pretty interesting to meet people who you've really gotten to know through their content. What was it? The OnlyFans girl who came on here called it the parasocial relationship, where it's like, I feel like I know a lot about you, and to you, I'm a complete stranger, but I feel like we're close friends because I know so much about you and you don't even know who the hell I am. That's how I feel with Tim Ferriss.
That's how people feel with you and I bet.
Yeah, it happens with you and I. And I was like, well, and it's just like a weird dynamic. It's weird, yeah. It's not like bad or good. It's just like a strange dynamic. It's a natural thing that happens with content like this. So I read The 4-Hour Workweek when I was in college, and I got, before COVID-19, there was the 4-hour fever. And the 4-hour fever was what happened to you right when you read that book. For the next 4 hours, you question every part of your life and you start fever dreaming about quitting everything, hiring a VA to do your job, going and living in Argentina, and, basically creating some online passive income business is going to give you $7K a month because that's your freedom number. And so and I know this because everybody I gave the book to, I'm like, look, you might want to clear the schedule because you're going to have the 4-hour fever as soon as you're done with this. Just don't make plans because whatever they are, they're going to get busted by this. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So 4-Hour Workweek was one of those books that I found to be really, really
life-changing,
informative, life-changing, especially at the time that I read it. I was 20, 21 years old, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And it was somebody saying, here's how I live. And it was totally different than anybody else. Okay, so that's how I knew him. You knew him in a different way. Could you describe how you knew him? And then I want to tell you some of the takeaways I had from this interview.
So I initially met him when I was coming home at 6 a.m. from the hospital after I got a kidney stone. My wife was driving me and I was sitting in the passenger seat and I was super messed up on morphine and all types of drugs. And I pull up to my house and I go, Sarah, what the hell is Tim Ferriss doing in front of our house? And I see him. I go, Tim, what's up, bro? What are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I lived on the block. I was like, oh, sick. Hey, you got any cures for kidney stones? And I just sounded like a total asshole. And then 2 days later, I see him again. I go, Tim, what's going on, man? I just want to apologize. I was come from the hospital. I was all hopped up on drugs, but I'm a huge fan. That's cool that you live around here. And then through that, we just started walking our dogs like in the park every once in a while together. And I would just see him in the park. Then a few weeks later, I get an email from Tim saying, hey, I want to learn about emailing. I like the hustle. Teach me about it. Can you go out? When you meet me at this restaurant in my neighborhood? I go and meet him at that restaurant and he goes, oh, what the hell? You're the dog guy? I go, what's up, man? He goes, why didn't you? And so he cold emailed me and I never told him who I was. And it was a total coincidence. And that's how I got to know him.
So I wanted to say two things. One, I'm going to tell people my philosophy about meeting people that you kind of, admire or you think highly of in some way. And the main trick that I have is I admire parts of people, not the whole.
Totally.
And this is a key thing that I think a lot of people get wrong. They look at it as a binary yes or no thing. Oh, this person, do you love them or do you hate them, right? Are they the best or are they the worst, right? Are they your hero or are they not your hero? And I never think like that, because when you meet people, you see this like full 360 picture of them and you're like, oh, like, no, for example, I met Tim Ferriss and he was actually quite quiet in person the first time I met him.
He's super quiet and shy.
And he's a little bit introverted or shy. And then when he did say things, I was like, oh, wow, that's like a little bit of the Tim Ferriss that I've heard or followed coming out. But also I was like, even though I love 10 things about this guy, there's a couple things about him that I wouldn't want to emulate, right? There's 6 things I'd want to copy, let's say, about the way that Tim Ferriss lives his life. But I was like, oh, something that's really important to me is like, let's say kids or having a family. And I don't know if it's important to him or not. I don't know him that well, but he doesn't have that. So I don't want to be him, right? I don't want to be the whole, but there's parts of him that I think are awesome that I would love to steal for my game. And I think about this with everybody.
I imagine you like standing over him and he's just sitting down and you're poking him with a stick and you're like, come on, tell me life hacks. Like, come on.
Yeah, basically what you did with your kidney stone thing is like, do you have one of these on your feet? What do you do?
Yeah, what's this rash mean,
I don't know, man. Maybe you should ask a doctor. And so same thing with Tony Robbins. I love Tony Robbins, but do I love the whole Tony Robbins? No, I love parts of Tony Robbins. And some people are like, dude, what about that thing he did or that thing he said? I'm like, I don't know about that. And if he did those, that would be bad. But I love his public speaking. I think he's amazing at that. That's what I try to steal from him. Or I love his mindset around XYZ. And that's what I've adopted from him. That's been really helpful. And this other stuff that's either not applicable or not admirable, well, it's fine. I just don't take that, right? I'm just walking through the farmer's market, picking up little bits and pieces of people and being like, oh, like Conor McGregor now is like, basically looks like he's like a roid head, like
coke addict.
I don't know. He's got allegations of sexual assault and he's just coked out or who knows. The guy's nuts. But like Conor McGregor from the years 2015 to 2018, what they call the young, hungry Conor, that's the Conor I liked. That was the things I drew a lot from. And I don't let the other stuff really tarnish that because I'm just only looking for the good. And the bad, I just say, oh, somebody else can pick that bad apple up. I'm not taking that out.
All right, so what about Tim?
Right? So that's just my general philosophy. Okay, so let me tell you some of the nuggets that I took away from this interview, because it was supposed to be, frankly speaking, it was supposed to be like, Tim Ferriss comes on the Milk Road. That's cool. That's just sort of like a bucket list item thing for me. But, for him, obviously it was a good way to get the word out about his NFT project. So I thought, I went in with like, pretty low expectations. Generally, when somebody goes on to like announce the launch of something, they're kind of just shilling that thing. He didn't do that. So that was kind of cool. And he said a bunch of things that were, I would say, life advice or money advice that I thought were interesting. Do you want the money or the life one first?
Money.
All right, money one. So I was like, Tim, what are you doing? Crypto prices are crashing. What are you doing? Are you making any adjustments? Do you look at the prices?
He's a crypto guy, by the way.
He said he bought Bitcoin for the first time, but like late 2012. And been accumulating kind of since. He's like, it's a significant thing for me. Not like, not everything, but it's significant. He said last year, Q3 2021, he sold enough to cover, like feel like he kind of covered his cost basis and banked a little bit of a win. And then the rest he's just like, holding to see how it all plays out. And he was like, he said a couple interesting things. He goes, I've made most of my money mistakes selling too early. And he gave a bunch of examples. He goes, I was the first advisor in Shopify super early on. And I owned pre-IPO shares of Twitter and Facebook. And as soon as they went public, so they grow, they go public. And, in that first year, they all hit like turbulent times and they, stock went way down. He's like, as soon as the lockup was over, I just sold because stock's going down. I was kind of a novice in public markets, frankly, still a bit of a novice in public markets. I didn't know what to do. So I just sold.
All of it?
He's like, yeah, all of it. He didn't specify that, but he made it sound like all of it.
Wow.
And he's like, those are massive financial mistakes, like selling Facebook, Shopify, and Twitter, like right when they went public, 6 months after is when the lockup ends, is, he's like, these are, hideous financial mistakes that I made. He's like, and it wasn't because he's like, so I learned when do you sell? So he goes, I now go into any position. I only buy if I know what conditions I would sell under. He's like, so most people have no exit plan. They don't know when they would sell, how long they plan to hold, or what would cause them to sell. He's like, I now have a plan when I go in. I know what would trigger me to sell. So if I'm going to deviate from that plan, I better have a really strong reason. Because the second thing is, I don't sell now because, the price went down. I sell if something I believed before, I now have new information that tells me that's not true anymore, or I'm surprised about it. He's like, so for crypto, for example, he's like, I haven't sold, but I haven't sold not because I'm like, more confident than ever. He goes, frankly, I just haven't done the homework to go figure out, were any of my initial assumptions wrong? I haven't done that homework yet. And he's like, that's what I'll do. I'll go talk to my smart friends, the ones who helped me get into this. And I'll say, is there anything that you used to believe that you no longer believe about crypto, or any red flags that have come up for you that didn't go in line with your initial hypotheses? I want to hear those before I make a decision on what I want to do. And I thought that was extremely reasonable. And I thought that the sort of selling early mistake is something that, I've shared on the pod too, that, like I sold Tesla early when there was like, I basically lost $5 million. I lost out on $5 million had I held. But there was a bunch of bad news and I didn't know what to do. And so then I just sold, right?
And by the way, for the Shopify example, it looks like 6 months after, it was around $2.50 a share. At its peak, it was $150. So that's something like, $1 million of shares that he had, which he definitely could have had, would have been like $50 million, which is like very substantial.
And so he was pointing out, my mistakes in investing haven't been buying the wrong thing. The biggest mistakes have been selling the right thing too early. And, I think that might be, he's like, I don't know if this applies to everybody, but he's like, for me, that has been, some of my largest kind of missteps. Okay. So then the second thing, he was talking about this project that he's doing, this NFT project. And I was like, so this is kind of crazy. I don't know if do you know what he's doing? Do you know what it is?
I know that he's always been interested in fiction writing. Yep. Like he's always wanted to write like stories. And for some reason he hasn't until now.
Right.
And I think this is like his first fictional story or book or series of podcasts. And it comes with an NFT, right?
Yeah, exactly. So he's written, I think, 5 or 6 best-selling business books, nonfiction business books, business life hack type books. And if he was going to do just another one of those, it would have been like, okay, cool. Like, just going back to the, what butter is your bread, right? That makes sense. But instead, he's like, I'm going to build like a world like Game of Thrones. He's like, I'm going to build a whole thing like this. Like, it's an entire fantasy world. All the characters are roosters.
Okay.
There's 8 houses. They compete in the great games, and they do this like, then there's a war and there's different classes and there's all the things like if you create like a sort of a giant fantasy like Tolkien or George R.R. Martin style thing. And along with it, there's like basically an NFT which you can buy that basically is not like it's literally just like you're buying a piece of art. And you're buying a ticket into the entertainment of like watching him build this world out.
It's a book, like one book.
It's not a book. It's like, I think it's just like long. He's like, I've written 10,000 words, but I don't think he's going to release it like a book. I think he's going to release it in some other way, like essays or chapters or podcasts and like other,
okay.
He's playing with different formats. I don't think he knows exactly how he wants it to come out yet. So anyways, pretty interesting. I was like, dude, so why are you doing this? He's like, well, he said a couple nuggets. He goes, I'm having the most fun when I'm creating something. And that's what gets me into flow state. And so he's like, so I knew I wanted to create something and I wanted to, if I just did another nonfiction book, I don't feel like I would have that magical feeling of being challenged and satisfied at the same time.
Yeah.
And so he goes, I talked to the guy who did Stephen Pressfield, who I think wrote The War of Art.
Yeah.
And he goes, he has this concept of a muse, which is like the project you're working on, or like, you know, the thing that you're playing with. And he goes, you're doing your muse a disservice if you don't go big. And he goes, so I decided, like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go big. And he goes, like, big is not, I have to write like an 8,000 word book or whatever, like an 8,000 page book. Like, that's big doesn't mean like literal volume. Big means I have to go to a point where I'm uncomfortable with this, and my friends are calling me and they're saying, Tim, are you okay? Are you sure this is what you want to do? And he's like, that's how I know that I've like pushed it into a realm that's like something interesting is going to happen.
And that's how I feel with this.
Yeah. What's with this podcast? What do you mean?
No, with him coming up with a nonfiction thing or a fiction thing called
you want to call him and be like,
I'm like, you know, you have nothing to lose here because like, you know, you're set, you're fine. And if this is creative, that's cool. But like, it's kind of weird. What are you doing, man? Like, are you okay?
Yeah, exactly. And he goes, that's when I'm going to basically do the things that are off the beaten path, something that I haven't done before, something that is new and interesting and novel. And so that's how he was talking about his thing. I was like, okay, I love that advice. The second thing he said was along those lines. He goes, I go, what if we're just sitting here like, you know, a year from now, just got a beer. We're like, dude, what happened with Cock Punch, man? That project was crazy. Like, where did it all go wrong? Like, if it all goes wrong, what do you think your answer will be if we're looking back at it a year from now and it's just like, that went totally wrong? What is the core risk? He goes, I've thought about this a lot. It's a good question. He goes, if I end up managing the project instead of creating it, I think it will have all gone wrong. And he goes, because he goes, anything great comes from, you know, staying at it. He goes, so I have to do the things that give me energy, because without the energy, there is no endurance. And that like really resonated with me. He was like, you know, with no energy, there is no endurance. He goes, so I got to spend my time on the things that give me energy. For me, that's drawing and that's creative writing. So I have to do those parts. That's also the parts those are my superpowers. That's what I'm good at. And I'm better at that
draws,
than other people.
Like he did the
his
animations?
background was like illustrations and comics. Like that's how he paid for college and stuff like that. Yeah, he's like a sketch artist. And I think that's what he originally wanted to do, was be a cartoonist in some way.
What a fascinating person.
So he was like, you know, those are my superpowers. I got to spend the time on that. If I just end up spending time managing this thing and it feels like a lot of administrative work, I know that for me, that gives me no energy, therefore no endurance, therefore I won't stay with it, therefore the great things won't happen. And I thought the self-awareness was really key. And this is something that I know as I think about my next projects, these are the types of like, you need to have like these strong ass pillars or tenets of like, this is what I am doing and this is what I'm not doing. And if I do this, I think it'll work. And if I don't do this, I know that I will have trouble. And I think that self-awareness is pretty baller.
Dude, that's awesome. He's always been a pretty wise person. Even like, you know, I think he wrote 4 Hour Work Week when he was maybe a little bit younger than you and I. Like he might have been only 30 when he wrote it. And he always was pretty wise, man. He's always had like interesting insight. And that's a really good insight about the energy and the endurance thing.
He had another one that I was on the topic of failure. He goes, I should first say that I kind of rigged the deck in my favor. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, you know, I go into a project thinking, how do I win even if this fails? How do I succeed even if this fails? And so he goes, I think about it in terms of, sure, there's the like, you know, do a lot of people read this thing? And, you know, does this become popular? Does it become financially successful? Sure, those are things. But like, he's like, I want to win even if those hard things don't happen. So he goes, I will only pick projects if I know that the act of doing it, the creative process of doing it is going to be awesome. If the people I'm going to meet along the way doing this are going to be awesome. And if the skills that I'm going to develop doing this are going to make me more awesome. And so he goes, if I do those 3 things, if I know that the skills, the knowledge, and the network that I acquire along the way is going to make it worth it for me, then I don't have to stress about the popularity of the financial income, because I'm going to win in either case. I'm going to win if just those things happen, or I'm going to win even bigger if the other happens. So he goes, I pick projects where I can stack the deck in my favor, and that's what I've done here.
And is this still the life or the money advice or the life one?
Now we're in the life advice. Yeah.
Dude, he's good, man. He's a really interesting guy. What's he doing now? So he just like, is he treating that as like, that's been his like 40-hour work week? Like that's been his job.
He's just going ham on this for like, you know, close to a year now. And he's like, dude, I've just put so many hours into this. He's like, yeah. And which is funny because people are criticizing like, oh, dude, you're doing an NFT. You're just like another celebrity doing an NFT. It's just a cash grab. And I told him this on the call. I was like, dude, that's crazy to me. First of all, he's donating 100% of the proceeds to like his charity that does like the research on like psychedelics and stuff like that to treat PTSD. So all the primary sales are going there, right? So that's like, that's a huge chunk of the financial reason you would do it. The second thing is, if you just count like the number of hours it takes to do this world building type of thing, like he's got to be working for minimum wage, basically, just in terms of the number of hours it takes to create something like this. And third, if he was going to do a cash grab NFT, he would have done it last year. He wouldn't be launching it now, and he wouldn't be giving away the money to charity. And he would be like doing it in a way that's like doesn't require him to like build out this whole fictional world. Like he would just be like, hey, here's a picture. Or, hey, meet this. This gives you 5 minutes to talk to Tim Ferriss, right? That's what he would do as just like a cash grab if he wanted to do it. And so I thought that was like, one of the funny criticisms.
Tim has like a really interesting celebrity. Ryan Holiday has this too. And I've known a few guys that have had this, where there's people I look up to, and then there's people who the people I look up to. So like Ryan and Tim, they both get like all these football coaches, all these like politicians, these rich billionaire types, all these interesting, like traditionally powerful people will reach out to them and like, hey, sensei, show me the way. What can I do about this? What should I do next? And I've always found that type of celebrity to be incredibly fascinating. And so like, I mean, Tim will like, not in a bad way, but he'll like name drop all these stories like on the pod. I'll be like, yeah, I was with Ed Norton recently, and he was telling me like this, and this, and I was trying to help him like figure out what to do. Like he like tells these stories, or is like when I was with Jamie Foxx, he was asking me about this, and I've always found that celebrity to be so fascinating. I've always wondered what his life is like.
I asked him another question. I go, you're one of the most like prolific interviewers. You've done, 600 episodes of interviews on your podcast. It's one of the top, 5 or 10 podcasts in the world. And I go, if you had a chance to sit down with Sam Bankman-Fried and interview him, you got a couple hours with him, how would you approach it? And I thought his answer was pretty interesting. So he goes, it's a tricky one because I don't know going in how much of what he's going to tell me is the truth or a lie. And so he goes, but I'll tell you how I would approach it, given that that's the problem. He goes, first, my goal initially is just to get him off of his party lines, get him off of his PR script. And so he's like, I would go and I would try to talk to as many of his old friends and coworkers as I can and ask them, if you must be surprised at what's happened here. If you could ask Sam one question, just genuinely heart to heart, what would you want to know the answer to that I can maybe ask on your behalf? And then he's like, I'd get those. He's like, then in the interview, I would use their name to kind of soften him up a little bit. So I talked to James, who, was your college roommate and knew you before any of this stuff, right? When you were just a guy, blah, blah, blah. And, he said he would want to know this. Like, what would you say to James? Because it's like saying to James versus saying to Tim, I think is like interesting. So I thought that was an interesting tactic. He goes, that gives me good research, but also maybe can get him to just like deviate from the same repetitive loop of answers he's going to give to everybody else. He goes, the second thing is, he goes, I'd be pretty direct. I go, what % of what you say to, before we do this, what % should I assume is true of the things that you're going to tell me? Is it 100 or is it less than 100? And like, if it's less than 100, I understand that, but why? And he goes, another version of that would be, you're doing a lot of media. What do your lawyers think of what you're doing? He's like, because it might make him laugh and get him to kind of talk about his motivations for why he's even doing an interview like this. Because it seems kind of counterintuitive to be doing all this stuff. No lawyer would tell you to go and do this stuff. He goes, the last thing, he goes, I just want to know the guy's fundamental beliefs because it seems like he's not stupid. He's got good hardware upstairs. And that's why I want to know what his beliefs are. Am I just supposed to assume that he's just a bad person? He was a criminally minded person, and for a long time he planned to do this criminal behavior, or did he have the right intentions and then somewhere along the way made a bad ethical decision under some stress or pressure, and that led him down a path of making the wrong decisions? And he's like, that's what I would be trying to figure out, and I would try to understand, his thinking around that, and tell him that's what I want to know. I want to understand that. I thought that was pretty cool.
So I'll wrap up with one last story about Tim. So in this, what you're saying kind of like he'll say these things sometimes in interviews as if he's coming off the cuff or that he's like just thinking out loud. I have never met someone like him who prepares for everything. He prepares for every single thing. And this is quite different than you and I. You and I are totally cool improvising. And you would think someone like him who's interviewed all these people or has talked publicly for so many hours that they can improvise. Maybe he can, but from my experience, he is not someone who improvises. And everything he says, the words are chosen very, very specifically. And so he'll say this line like, oh, I don't play a doctor on TV and I don't pretend to do that. Like he'll say that line and like, that's just like, he must have heard that somewhere. He's like, okay, that's actually a good line to get. That's a good brand message.
Disarm.
I'm going to keep saying that. And so another thing that he'll do is like, one time I interviewed him for The Hustle and I interviewed him on the phone and then I transcribed it. And there was a couple instances where I made an error. So he was right to yell at me. And he didn't yell at me, but he was just like, no, that's not what I said. And we're talking about like, I would write the word hadn't instead of had not. He said had not, and I wrote hadn't. So I was in fact wrong. And he like very specifically called that out. And he did that or he's like, no, there shouldn't be a comma here. There should be a period and then a new sentence, or like these like incredibly. Well,
if he did that, then he's gonna be pretty pissed at this interview, because I definitely move stuff around to help him.
No, he does not like that. And I don't blame him. He is so specific about his brand. And in fact, if you go and see for example, there's this conference called 212 that I went to, and Tim went and he gave a testimonial for it. And if you read the testimonial, it's very specific, where in his head, he's like, well, I can't endorse anything, but I can't say is, Adam hosted a great conference. They're wonderful. He's a wonderful person. Or like some people will ask us, you and I, like I've asked you to do a testimonial for something and you're like, just write whatever. Not him. Everything about his brand, like what you see out in public and what he writes, he is very specific and it's all incredibly well thought out. So like we almost had him speak at a conference or something like that. And we just started chatting about it. And he was like, wanting to know exactly who all was there. And I'm like, what do you mean, dude? Why does it matter to you? Just like fucking wing it. Just talk. And like, that's not his style at all. Like it was all incredibly precise, well thought out. It's all, and everything had a purpose. And I've always found that to be very admirable about him, because I remember being pissed off when he didn't yell at me, but like he kind of like had a tone where he's like, no, that's not what I said. This is what I said. And I remember being upset about that. Right. And then I was like, no, man, he's right. He has a brain and he's sticking to it. And I always thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. Well, all right, Tim, I'm sorry. I did definitely chop up the interview to try to make it shorter and better.
When's it go live? When's it go live?
It's already live. Too late.
Tell me if he replies to you. That's going to be the follow-up. I bet you he will.
We'll see.
He's very specific about it. And I appreciate that.
You're right. I had told him, I was like, he's like, yeah, I'll do it. Just send me the questions in advance. So I want to make sure I can prepare and do the best job I can. And I was like, well, I don't know the questions I'm going to ask you. So, okay, I guess I'll do the work now. And so I did it. And then he's like, okay, cool. For this question, I think we should do this and this on this. And I was like, wow, this is like way more in depth than anybody. And then even during the thing, he's like, I did an audio video test earlier, blah, blah, blah. It should be good. Cause he's like, whatever, in some foreign country right now. And he's like, and then on some of the answers, he's like, okay, stop. Can I redo that? I think I was not being clear there. And then he would like do it again. And I was like, wow, we're so different, but I get why being the way that you are leads you to have the type of brand and success that you have. I am so different than that. I am like, I'm basically like the equivalent of a food fight, and he's like a Michelin star restaurant.
Exactly, dude. I mean? Like, it's so fascinating.
I'm just throwing mashed potatoes around and getting it everywhere. And he's like, got that perfect plate.
Dude, I remember we were with our dogs, like walking, and I go, oh, that's a cool dog leash. And or cool dog collar or something. And I was expecting him to be like, oh yeah, I got it on Amazon. It's pretty great. He was like, oh, this thing, you see, this comes from like this rare, like African horse hair. And like he had like some in-depth story about it. And that was and then I noticed every time something, like we had these conversations, everything about his life, it felt very purposeful, high intent.
Intentional. Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, that's cool. It really highlights, like, it's like you see a 12 out of 10 at being very intentional. And then you're like, oh, wow, I thought I might have been an 8 or a 9. Actually, I'm a 4.
Totally. He's very specific.
Scale.
Our software is the worst. Have you heard of HubSpot?
See, most CRMs are a cobbled together mess, but HubSpot is easy to adopt and actually looks gorgeous.
I think I love our new CRM.
Our software is the best.
HubSpot. Grow better.
All right, you want to do another one of yours?
Yeah, let's do some other topics. Okay, so where do you want to shift to? Maybe some ideas?
Is Spotify interesting? Or the real estate insights? I'm interested in that. You said maybe, but
all right, let me give you the real estate thing real quick. So I talked to somebody, I can't say their name, but
I like where this is going.
Who has built, I would say, in the last 7 years, I think it is, 7 years, they've built a real estate portfolio owning about $1 billion of real estate assets, where with 40% debt. So 60% is equity. So about 600 million of equity in these properties. And
do I know this person?
They started 7 years ago from zero and had zero ability to zero network, zero ability to borrow, only skills. They thought they knew what they were doing and they were able to build this up. Okay. So I was talking to him and I was like, and he does retail in a specific, he does retail real estate. So basically, or I guess in their world, they would call it commercial real estate. But what I mean is retail stores. So he'll buy a shopping center and the shopping center will have a Hobby Lobby and, a Starbucks and whatever. And there's 6 spots and he'll basically own that center and then he'll get it at least, he'll buy it, he'll build on it, he'll lease it up, and then he'll either hold it or sell it after that. And he's basically compounded his money. I think I was doing the calculations afterwards. He's compounded his money about 60% a year for 7 years or something like that. Even maybe even a little bit more. And so I think 60% was the minimum that I calculated was possible for where he was at. I think is a little bit north of that. And I was like, dude, first of all, this is crazy. Congratulations. Second of all, my worldview is that dude, shopping centers, is this still a thing? Aren't you, is this not dying? In my world, in the tech world, we're just everything's going online, everything's e-commerce, you're swimming against the current. And I go, am I just wrong about that? Or what's going on? How I mean,
the Hobby Lobby folks are always going to need a lobby to hobby, bro. They're going in real life.
So that's what he said. He goes, you're right. He goes, but there are some specific trends, some specific categories that are going completely anti-trend and expanding.
Home Depot, probably.
Because I go, how does it work? He goes, what's your edge? What are you doing differently than anybody else? Because you're getting a dramatically better result than anybody else I know in real estate. And he goes, well, I'll get a call from, the owner of, whatever, Dollar General or something like that. And they'll say, hey,
literally,
we're looking to expand.
Well, not the owner, like an executive, an executive there, you mean?
Could be the CEO, could be the head of real estate, whoever, somebody at the top of these companies. And they'll say, look, we're trying to get into Lexington, Kentucky. We want to be in that geo and we want more stores in that geo. Can you make this happen? And I'm like, and he's like, so they're not going to make it happen. I go, no, slow down. I go, so what, why do they call you? He's like, well, they've done business with me. I'm like, okay, great. But why aren't they just calling a broker? Or somebody in Lexington? And he just started laughing. He's like, or even more specifically, I'm like, so then you have to find the right location. He goes, no, sometimes they'll just tell me we want to be in this location. I was like, then why don't they just contact the guy from there and just do the deal? And he's like, I'm like, these companies have real estate teams. He's like, yeah, they do. He's like, he's like, 3 things. He goes, number 1, most of the owners of these places are a pain in the ass for them to deal with. He goes, they know I'm easy to do business with. Why? Most owners don't want to invest in their properties. They won't do any tenant improvements. I will invest money to build out the stores the way they want. And because I've been willing to do that, they would prefer to work with me over any other developer or the average developer, because I have shown that I can build fast and I will invest my own dollars into building it. Okay, second thing. And I go, but doesn't that guy just think man, if I just did this? He goes, yeah, but it's speculation. He goes, I know because I have these relationships, I know they'll come through. That owner would have to on spec invest in maybe improving some part of their property in order to make it more inhabitable. I'll just do it.
And by the way, so he gets the Hobby Lobby interest, then he can go get a loan and tell the bank, hey, I got interest in this. Therefore,
not even that. He'll get the interest, then he'll go tie up the property. He'll commit to buy it. but he doesn't have to have the money right away. He has 90 days or whatever. He's got to like close the thing, 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is. And in that time, he then goes to get Hobby Lobby to sign the lease. Then he goes to the financiers. He says, here's a property with a signed 10-year lease from a highly reputable client. Can I now get financing?
This sounds like the best business ever.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like, oh, Hobby Lobby's not going out of business anytime soon. You have a 10-year tenant. Yeah, this is all easy.
So then I was like, okay, I kind of buy that the mom and pop owner of these, like, they own like 1 or 2 shopping centers, 3 shopping centers. They're not like, they're more scared than they are, more fearful than they are greedy. They're not investing in it. Okay, I buy that some people might fall into that. What else? What are your other edges? He goes, I don't die by paralysis by analysis. He goes, these guys will, something on page 7 of the lease will get them all tied up. And he goes, they'll just get like some covenant they're really worried about. He goes, I have like basically like a standardized deal with these guys. My leases are like clean and simple. And like, I'm willing to bear some risk. These are not like the most ironclad, bulletproof. Every inch of every part of my body is covered and can't be exposed. He's like, I just don't die by paralysis by analysis. Like these guys will just die in the deal-making process of the lease because they get worried about stuff that really doesn't matter. I've been doing this for long enough that I understand, look, if things go wrong, I have a plan B, a plan C, plan D. I don't have to make plan A this completely fully insured thing. It's like, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more. And he goes, the other thing is that they will have like, he gave me some other deal making points, but I'll leave those out. Some of those are, maybe a little like, I don't know, personal or secretive, I guess. But I go, okay, what about these tenants? I go, who are these people? Who's trying to expand? I thought the whole retail landscape is like shrinking and collapsing and Amazon's killing everybody. He goes, yes, but there are certain categories. So he goes, anything DIY. So Hobby Lobby is an example of this. DIY, people like to go in, they like to see the stuff, they like to have the stuff, and they need a bunch of inventory in a big space. So they're willing to rent these big stores. He goes, another one, anything that caters to the Black and Latino community. He goes, for some reason, those groups are not buying online as much as, white or Indians or other races.
What
he goes,
stores
because
are
they're
those?
Not buying online, their stores are still thriving. And he goes, and I asked them, like, why do you think it'll be like Burlington Coat Factory?
Got it.
Or things like that. And he's like, for Burlington Coat Factory, he's like, a lot of these places, they're not just like, oh, I just need a shirt. Let me go buy the shirt. Okay, if you wanted to do that, Amazon might be more convenient or ordering online might be more convenient.
Oh, like I need a coat
for
today.
A lot of these communities, it's a hangout. It's like, this is the one place we go when we leave the house. We go for an outing and we go to this place. And he's like, so that is like a big piece of like, it's like part of their lifestyle is to go to stores and hang out and do the whole nine. He's like, so those stores are all thriving. He goes, the third one is anything that's like super low end. So dollar store style things, because they're actually cheaper than online and they don't have to have the shipping problems. And so people, if you want the lowest price, that's still the place to go. Fourth is he goes, like your wife and my wife, home goods and home improvement. So go to Home Goods. It's like, he goes, they're treasure hunt experiences.
So what's that,
goes,
like a TJ Maxx or Home Goods?
TJ Maxx, Ross, Marshalls, Home Goods, things like that. He goes, they go because there's a joy in finding an amazing deal.
Yeah.
And so they don't want the most efficient experience where they just go online and they just buy the thing and they're done. There's this actually like the joy of the hunt. So they want to go to this big messy store and they want to find gems and they want to do that. And again, that's their outing. That's their fun. That's their hobby. And so the retail store still really matters. And so he gave me this like list of categories that were like still expanding. And I thought that was pretty interesting. It's like some of the nuance that you don't really pay attention to unless you're like in that field. And so I just appreciated kind of talking to somebody who
super fascinating
knows their stuff in that area.
How many people work at this person's company? Like less than a dozen?
No, it's probably like somewhere between 20 and 30, I would say overall.
Man, that seems like, it seems too boring for me. Like I think I would, for some reason I pick things that probably make less money, but are more dopamine hit.
Generally boring, but they do high deal volume. He said he had done like 80 or 100 transactions this last year, which is just, and that's doing a real estate deal every 3 days, basically, which is just an insane amount of volume. And he's like, there's a reason that's not normal, but like the whole real estate world has shifted. So I needed to shift my portfolio accordingly. Like what are my generational holds? What are my, quick opportunistic buys, and then what are my B properties that I need to offload because interest rates are changing and the real estate market's about to crash, so I need to do this. He goes, I remember in 2008 I was the guy who was like, I'm going to do real estate, like, because real estate had been good for like, 8 straight years. He's like, so I was running into the burning tunnel and people were just handing me properties. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. He goes, now I realize you want to be the guy on the way out. And hey, here you go, bud. Have fun. Have fun with this property. Yeah, it's all the papers, all the numbers look good because the last 5 years have been fantastic. The last 7 years have been fantastic. But the next 7 years might not be the same. And he's like, I know now. He's like, now I've learned which way to go in the tunnel when it's burning.
What skills or attributes does this person have you think that sets them apart?
Extremely aggressive.
They're like, aggressive.
When you talk to them, you almost feel like at any given moment, like it's like, are we laughing or are we fighting? What's happening here? Like, they're a very friendly person. It's not that. It's not nothing wrong with that. But they are aggressively minded, where it's like we play to win. Like the way they raise their kids is to win. It's like their kids, like, if they do something bad, they don't go to timeout. They do 20 burpees. And it's like, that's like, just like standard. It's like, okay, before dinner, we're going to go run wind sprints. And then like, that's just how we do things before dinner. And like girls, boys, 2-year-old, 10-year-old, doesn't matter. Like whoever you are, this is how we roll.
Well, now your back's going to hurt. You just got lawn care duty. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Like there's just a play to win mentality. That's the first thing. Second thing is giant chip on shoulder. Massive insecurity. Daddy didn't love me. Daddy was mean to me. People said I wasn't shit. People said I would never be something. Hold on to that. Use that as fuel. And that same thing that kind of like, and they'll say like, yeah, that stuff doesn't bother me anymore. It's like, yeah, but you brought it up to me 8 times in the last 3 years. So like, I think there's like, you haven't let it go. That's for sure. I think you've used it to a very, very productive end for sure. But that chip on your shoulder is like, what do they say? Chip on shoulder equals chip in pockets, chips in pockets. That's what's happening. So that's the second trait. Third is amazing at deal making, negotiation, deal making, gift of gab. Spends very little time in front of computers, spends a lot of time in front of people or on the phone, tons of time on the phone. And like, I feel like for our generation, like, how much time do you...
Dude, I fucking hate talking on the phone. I just click
spend on talking to, potential business things on the phone. Like, I spend essentially zero. And in fact, even if there's a business opportunity, they're like, hey, I'd love to do a call. Like, I just tell them straight up, hey, I hate doing calls. But if you write it down, like, I'm happy to respond.
Yeah,
and then, like,
I won't even listen to it to like a voice memo. Yeah, like I'm not doing any of that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so this person spends a lot of time on the phone, and they do that to gather tons of info. And they'll just, they're like driving a bunch, they'll just dial. Okay, I'm driving 4 hours to go see this property. In that time, I'm going to make 14 phone calls or whatever. And hey, brother, what's going on? What you seeing? Oh, what happened to that property you had out there? Oh, you having trouble? Well, send me the numbers. Let me take a look. Maybe I can help you out, blah, blah, blah. And they're just constantly surfacing opportunities or information. Oh, that guy's having some trouble? Interesting. Like, oh, this person, they're underwater there. Oh, I know Hobby Lobby wants to be there. So I'm going to, okay, good. Let me make that happen. And so they just find these deals like that.
To me.
And
I love learning
that's
about
one
this.
of the traits.
Dude, I love it.
Very different. Like, honestly, pretty standard for the real estate world. None of the things I said so far are like shocking to anybody that's in real estate. But for us in the tech world, it's a very different play style. It's totally different set of strengths, activities than what we do. So for us, it's like, ooh, that's cool. That's new.
That's crazy to me. Dude, by the way, my father is like that. He owns a business where when he spends his winters in Florida, he brings a phone that plugs into the wall and he brings a fax machine. And it's just constantly calling like, hey, what you got? What you hearing? What's good? And like his company, sells millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff. And it's just with a fucking phone, a fax machine, and mailing checks and just constantly calling like, hey, what you got? What you hearing? That's just how the business is. It's crazy, man. And they kill it.
Par here, talk to me.
That's what they do. They go, what's good, brother? What's going on? Or he'll call people nephew. What's up, nephew? What's good?
You got to work at a barbershop if you're going to just call non-nephews
call
nephew.
people nephew.
You got to be black and in a barbershop. I can't believe that your dad gets away with that. That's amazing.
It's kind of like that. I'll be like, what's up, nephew? He just calls people nephew.
What's up, young blood?
He just calls people nephew. All right. Well, you want to do one more?
Let me tell you about a space that I've been poking around in it. It's not something I'm going to do, but there's definitely opportunity. You know, I poked the beehive and I heard some buzzing. I don't want to go near it, but like somebody who wants honey, go there.
That's a very good
analogy. I really pieced together that analogy on the fly. I didn't know what the next word was going to be.
Yeah, you just had words coming out of your mouth, not sure how the sentence is going to end it, and it totally found its place. Wonderful.
Yeah, that was really satisfying. All right. So OnlyFans. Okay, so we've talked about OnlyFans a bunch, but let me tell you the angle that I'm thinking about here. So,
by the way, I do not give a shit about OnlyFans. Everyone talks about OnlyFans. The only thing I care about is Brap Barbie. Do you know who that is? I think that's her name.
Bad.
Is that it?
Bad Bobby. What did you just say?
I thought it was Brap. I thought it's
Brad the Barbie.
Isn't there like an R and an H in the first word?
Just an H. Just the H.
Wait, it's bad? That's how you spell bad?
Yeah,
that's stupid.
I feel like you're up to speed on Bad Bobby. What's her name? Bad Barbie. What's her name?
I don't know. Bad baby. I just know her as the Catch Me Outside girl from Mari, but or Dr. Phil or some bullshit. Anyway, that's the only person I know, and it's like
she changed like races.
Wait, is she black now or white? What is she supposed to be?
White.
She's white.
She's now black.
Oh well.
Have you seen her? Google Bad Baby. Right.
Whatever. She switched.
She's Jewish and her mom's Italian.
She really?
And then now she's being like criticized because she's like, people say it's like modern day blackface because she's like really like changed her look. Like when she was on Dr. Phil, she looked like I don't know, like a spoiled white girl or something like that. And anyways, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Brap Barbie or whatever the fuck her name is.
She
kills it. She kills it. And like apparently she bought like a $20 million house. So whatever. So bad
anyways,
Barbie.
Point is, company crushes it. So they do billions of dollars in revenue. The owner, whose name is now public, so we can talk about him, Leo. He's a fan of the pod, friend of the house. He, I think he cleared or like the company cleared 500 million in profits in 2020 or 2021. Like just an insanely profitable, insanely big business. Okay. And what is OnlyFans? OnlyFans is basically like a storefront where anybody can sell pictures or videos. So you're selling content. And so, I do e-commerce. I come from the Shopify world. I know that in Shopify is your storefront. That's your equivalent of OnlyFans. But you use like this whole host of tools around it to make your store sell better, to increase sales. So you'll use Klaviyo to, grab people's email addresses and then send them automated emails.
I know where you're going with this one.
You use, this app to boost your, to do upsells automatically, right? To cross-sell or upsell new products so that you increase the dollar value per customer. So you use all these different things. OnlyFans kind of has none of this stuff. But it has the same volume and the same like seriousness of any of these other big storefront / marketplace type of ideas. And so I think there's a whole world of OnlyFans SaaS tools that can be built. And there
do
are
they
some.
have
So like,
but do they have an ecosystem? Like
they just use it on their own. You don't have to like plug into OnlyFans. You just like there's not like a platform you have to go be approved to sell under to be an app like the way Shopify does. You got to be in the Shopify app.
But
store.
Do they have like so they don't have, but there's no OnlyFans app store.
No, you just sign up and you just use products. So for example, there are products that are like chatbots. So what they do is somebody follows you or they subscribe. Either they're a free follower or maybe they're paying the $5 a month subscription. But where you really make your money is what they call pay-per-view. And so that's where you sell like, oh, I did a photo shoot, whatever, like, I dressed up like Catwoman, paid $19 to unlock, right, that piece of content. And so what these bots, these SaaS tools are doing is they basically are like, hey, we will go message all of your followers as if it's you, being like, hey, did you see my Catwoman thing? I think you're going to love it. Follow up 24 hours later. Like picture 3 in the album was like just for you, wink face, whatever, right? Like this is just a bot. And what is this? This is a sales rep that is going around for you doing sales and selling your content, selling your product. And so all the tools today are pretty rudimentary. They are pretty, or they're just missing certain things from certain ecosystems. And I think somebody could do what Andrew Wilkinson did with WeCommerce,
100%.
or where he basically rolled up a set of plugins and tools, I think that you could do that in the OnlyFans world. Now, to do this, why am I not doing this? Well, I don't want to deal with people on OnlyFans every day. I don't want to be like selling this content every day. It's not like, what's it called? Like, it's not my ikigai. It's not the thing I was put on this earth to do.
Yeah.
But we got a bunch of friends who are less, little less
different
pretentious about
different standards.
stuff.
Maybe we were not going to say lower or higher standards. We'll say more wide.
Wider standards.
Yeah, they're not
left to right.
Yeah, it's not a our bar's up here and someone else's bar's down here. It's
Different
a little,
bars.
It's a little wider. Yeah.
So if you're one of these wide standard fellas out there, I think there's a lot of opportunity.
If your moral compass is a little wobbly.
And there's the whole ecosystem, right? So if you want to start an agency, OnlyFans agencies do really, really well, right? Because they take care of the back office, they take care of growth for these OnlyFans creators. I know 2 people personally that have built OnlyFans, like just SEO optimized websites that are like search engines. So it's like find a creator, discover a creator, search for a person.
No way. Who?
And they're like metric sites. And they've built them and they're either like cash flowing really, really well, like, to the tune of like, $100,000 a month of free cash flow, or they sold them for like 2-3 million.
Is one of them called Fans Metric?
I don't want to say, because I kind of already said some numbers. So, there are like Ben, we know 2 personally that did this. And so metrics, like in any ecosystem, same thing with Twitch. It was like there was a metrics site and the metrics site got big. Then there were Streamlabs, and Streamlabs made it easy for somebody to like accept tips and donations. And they made like a alert system so that every time you got a tip or donation, you could automatically acknowledge that person, which leads to more tips. And that Streamlabs became an indispensable tool for every Twitch creator. What is the Streamlabs of OnlyFans?
Dude, that's so fascinating.
There is so much opportunity to build SaaS tooling for these creators, to build agencies, to build, a whole bunch of different opportunities around this ecosystem, because most people aren't going to go there, myself included. And if you do go there, the tool, it's like new and growing so fast that the pie is big, but it's not totally saturated the same way that Shopify feels quite saturated, or, tools for iPhone developers or whatever seems pretty saturated.
Do you follow, have you ever seen that TikTok guy who goes up to people with fancy cars and he goes, "Hey, what do you do for a living?"
Yeah, of course.
What's his name? Brandon Mack, I think, or something Mack. It's awesome. And for some reason, it feels like all of the ones lately have all been, it's always hot girls, and they like make jokes, and then they finally admit that they do OnlyFans. And OnlyFans is one of those ideas where when I heard about it like 5 years ago, I'm like, who the fuck's going to pay for that? Like, just Google it. Like, you'll see the same thing. Just like, Google that person's name followed by the word nude, and you'll like find exactly what you want. Like, why would you pay $20 a month for this? And obviously they proved me wrong. And it's gotten to be such a huge thing that it seems like if I go to LA and you see a hot girl in a fancy car, like just based off me scrolling in bed at night, it's like, oh, they're definitely it's an OnlyFans model. And that is like totally new and strange to me. And that is what's made me feel like, oh, this is like going to be much bigger. It's significantly more mainstream than I ever thought. Like, no one would make, like, maybe now people will make jokes about Pornhub, but like every guy out there has like 5 or 10 porn sites that they go to, and never in a million years would they say out loud what it is. Do you know what I mean? And
in fact, I'm not even going to say any words for the rest of the segment.
And now it's like OnlyFans is like a thing that like, well, we talk about because it's like so mainstream popular. And I find it to be incredibly fascinating. Like, even just in the last 4 years, we started mentioning the word Pornhub because they would do funny skits like during the Super Bowl, or they would like, do fun. It's like become a joke, but that has just happened.
By the way, one good idea was just to do another OnlyFans. And so I forgot what it's called, Fansly or Fans Only. I think it's Fansly. Fansly is just like, if you don't want to be on OnlyFans, come on Fansly. And they're just like, well, we'll be number 2. It's fine. we'll make some different decisions. Like, we allow whatever, like, I don't know what they're different, like cartoon creators or something like that. Like, like it can be like a digital thing or whatever.
Like there's 7-minute abs, and some Fansly is just going to be 6-minute abs. It's like, it's the same thing. We charge you only 9% instead of 10.
Exactly. And then they're doing pretty well. Like they do fairly well. And so I think there was just This was just one of those winning ideas. It was one of those really big winning ideas. I don't know if I told you this, by the way. I had a buddy who was a VC who kind of quit his job and was going to raise like his own fund. And then he was just like, he identified, I think 3 years ago, he goes, OnlyFans. And I go, what? And he goes, OnlyFans, it's going to be massive. And I go, I think it's already pretty big. At that time, it seemed pretty big for what it was. I was like, dude, how popular can this get? Like that's
what's
that's
it
crazy.
worth now, you think? What could it sell for now? I don't even know.
I don't know. I think very, very conservatively, 2 billion is my guess, and aggressively closer to 10. I don't know. You know, it's hard to say. Like all the market like multiples just got changed, so it's hard to know. Also, you know, there's not that many buyers for OnlyFans, so this is the problem with OnlyFans.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah,
can't really go public, and there's not that many buyers, but it's super, super profitable. And so my buddy was like, "It's going to be big. I'm going to spend the next year trying to get ownership in OnlyFans." I go, "What do you mean? Like, just I guess you're going to reach out?" He goes, "Yeah, but if it doesn't work, like I'm going to find a way to get ownership in OnlyFans." I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just going to I'm going to invest in it. I'm going to help them. I'm going to do anything I can." And he literally made that his mission for like a year.
Did he get it?
And he did it. He was able to, they didn't let anybody invest, but this guy was able to go in and get advisory shares by helping them out in all these different ways. And he did it. He got a piece of it. And he was right. He sent me, he goes, I remember when Twitch acquired us, he goes, OnlyFans will be bigger than Twitch. I go, bigger than Twitch? No way. And I was like, dude, I don't think you know. Twitch is like one of the top 6 most visited websites in America or something like that. Like most trafficked or something. And he goes, yeah, you'll see. And he was right. It passed Twitch in terms of users and revenue in the last year. And I was like, wow, this guy really called his shot of being super, super bullish on OnlyFans. He was absolutely correct.
Dude, does he also own $600 million worth of real estate? This guy sounds awesome.
No, different guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board. I think WeCommerce is an interesting company. WeCommerce is Andrew Wilkinson, fan of the pod or a friend of the pod. He comes on all the time. Their market cap is decimated right now. It sucks right now, but their business is pretty good. It's a good business. It's way undervalued. But I think it's an interesting model. And yeah, I'm on board with your aggressive friend who pushed his way into OnlyFans.
Do you have a pregame routine you do before this podcast?
I listen to music and I review all my notes. That's about it. Like
a specific song or just generally whatever is on?
I use Pandora, and then I 1 hour before. So I have my schedule locked in. So for the people listening, we record for 1 hour. And so we're usually here at the top of the hour, and then we start. And then 1 hour before that, it's my quiet time where I review everything.
Quiet time, nice.
Well, people are messaging me, and I'm like, hey, I can't talk to you right now. I'm preparing. And so it's my time to read notes, and I scan the news, and I just want to know what's going on in the world.
Yeah, my daughter has that. That's great. Quiet time. I love it.
What do you
my
do?
My sister invented this great thing because she's like, dude, my kids don't want to sleep and they just want to play. And so she's like, I got to turn she's like, I don't even care if they're asleep. I just want them to go to their room and just not talk to me and just stay in the bed and have fun. So she created nighttime sister playtime. And so it's this hilarious thing where they're like, oh, it's nighttime sister playtime. And they get to go run into their beds and the two sisters can play together, but they have to be quiet because it's nighttime sister playtime. Nobody else is allowed in, which means don't bother mommy and daddy. And I just thought, what a hilarious rebrand of go in the room, shut the door and shut up. And so then now whenever I'm doing something even work wise, with my coworkers and our e-com thing or whatever, I'll be like, all right, it's nighttime sister playtime. That just means
don't talk to me.
Don't bother me with Slack and don't talk to me. I'm going to go do some work now.
That's what I have.
Mommy and daddy got to go do things.
Dude, I just I blame everything on the pod. I'll be like, hey, preparing for the pod. Don't talk to me, please. Because everyone knows it's a deadline. Why? Do you have a routine?
I kind of have one, but I was making fun of myself this morning about it. So my schedule's similar, I think, to you, where now the morning is all locked in, where it's I work out at a specific time. And then at the end of the workout, I do my 10 minutes of mindset stuff that I do. And it's it's really good. Everything's really healthy, but it's almost comically healthy, where I was doing it today and I was like, what am I? I was like, I'm that cliche tech guy that's
things have changed.
I do my fasted cardio, and then I 7.5 minutes in the sauna, Then 11 minutes uninterrupted staring at the sun. It's like, I have sex for 3 minutes, 3 times a day. Studies show that it's better. I'm like doing all these like life optimization things that really, I'm not a huge fan of those things because I feel like individually I like all of them, but together I'm like, am I this delicate that I need to be like this? Like, am I like, I'm not one of these like performance F1 cars or whatever that's like, has to be like perfectly balanced everywhere. I don't want to be so fragile.
You are what you didn't want to be now. I think that's good. You look better. I think you look significantly better than you did 3 years ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, but that could be anything. Who knows? Who knows what that could be?
Wait, let me tell you really quick.
Right, I don't know if that's the morning routine because that's been more recent.
Speaking of morning routines, I was actually excited to tell you about this. So I'll tell you about it more when I'm done with it. But I met this guy on Twitter named Isaac French. Do you know Isaac French? He's that guy
but it's a strong name.
It's a strong name, and that's why I got interested in him, frankly. But he's that guy who has that.
Not gonna lie, French. I'm here for the name.
Dude, Isaac French is his name. I met him on Twitter. He's the guy who he bought a 5-acre plot of land and like built cabins on it and turned it into an Airbnb that's making like millions of dollars in sales. But he's only 25 and he like architect and
oh right, we featured him on the pod
a
long time ago, and he like called you and he told you all the numbers and all that.
Yeah, and he like architect the whole thing, and he's also an accountant, so he did all the accounting, and then he even like hired all the builders himself, so he was the general contractor. Just this interesting guy. I hung out with him. I met him on Twitter. I eventually met up with him. He's really fascinating, and he's part of this religion, I guess is the right way to describe it, called homestead heritage. And basically, if you're an outsider, it kind of looks like a Mennonite society a little bit. You know, like what Mennonites are?
No, what is that?
You ever seen Amish people?
Yeah.
So
sure.
This is like, he would not say that they're the same, and they aren't. But from an outside perspective, it all like looks a little similar. And so,
by the way, those are the best descriptions where it's like they'd be kind of offended at this, but this is what it is.
Well, they're like objectively not the same, but like if you go, I posted their website in the thing. In the chat, you'll see guys wearing like those big wide hats, and like there's like a cow or like a horse like tilling the land, and they're walking alongside of it. And like a lot of the women wear like the long dresses, and so listen to the description of their religion. It's a religion, but it's also a community. But listen. Homestead Heritage is an agrarian and craft-based intentional Christian community. Its literature stresses simplicity, sustainability, self-sufficiency, cooperation, service, and quality craftsmanship. And so it's this like super.
Hold on, I don't understand any of that. What does that mean? What does any of that mean?
Yeah, dude. It's hard to understand if you don't know. But I spent time with him, and he's taught me all this. But like basically, somehow they derived from like from the Bible or something, like it's their duty or something to like create like high quality craftsmanship like stuff, and to like farm on the land and be sustainable. And like you find God in like doing hard work and good work and being honest and creating stuff with your hands. That's like, again, right. This like huge generalization from a massive outside perspective. But basically they make their own food. So if they own 500 acres in Waco, Texas, which is about 2 hours ish from Austin, and they like all of their food is like made on that land, and like within the community they share food with one another, and they're also pretty savvy at business. Like I don't know how that kind of comes into this, but like he's an accountant, and so he's like, oh, I just love like being diligent with numbers. And I'm like, oh my God, you're making me weak at the knees, my man. Like telling me stuff. So anyway, this weekend he's having like it's like their festival. They do like a festival where you can go in and buy like their arts and crafts. And I'm driving 90 minutes to go there. And like, we're going to like sing Christmas songs and like buy arts and crafts. And I'm incredibly excited to show you to report back about what it's like. This community is so fascinating to me. And so it's kind of interesting.
I'm imagining, did you watch The Office? You know, when Dwight has his Airbnb?
I'm imagining that like too. Yes.
Schrute Farms. Like that's what I'm imagining. And you're going to go meet Moe's. Wow. That is incredible. You know, if you told me if you live this way, you can live till 200, I might do it then. That is how big the cost is to me of like, Yo, go till your own food. I don't even know what tilling is, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's something you do with your hands or your feet, right? Like what is tilling?
I think
right?
it's when like a cow like pulls along like a rake or something and it like moves the soil, then you can like plant shit in it. I don't know. But yeah, dude,
I'll watch that shit on TikTok.
I would bet I bet you these people are pretty happy. I think that there is like happiness and simplicity, but like who the hell knows? Everyone's unhappy. But anyway, that's what I'm doing this weekend. I'm going to report back.
Well, I like that it's kind of like Amish people that love money. That's kind of already intriguing, right? Like, tell me more.
Yeah, which is basically like, have you ever walked around in Brooklyn? And like, I know Ben Levy, who's here, like lived in this part of, or ish in this part of Brooklyn. Have you ever been around like the Orthodox Jews?
No, but you said they like run the place in Brooklyn,
Dude, they
right?
run the place, man. And they like, you'll walk around in parts of Brooklyn and they'll be speaking Yiddish, or like you go to certain stores and like everything's in Yiddish and you're like, am I in a different country? This is wild. And they kind of like, you like help others in the community. It's really fascinating. I love these. I actually like those cultures. I think it's really interesting that those exist.
All right. I think that's it for today. I'm going to save the rest for next episode.